Howdy everyone, Chris here. Today's episode we're going to repair this rust spot without welding it, and this is a DIY repair that you can do at home.
The best repair for this rust is always going to be to cut out and weld in new metal. I realize that not everybody has the skills, tools, or time to do a repair like that. So this procedure is going to require very little tools and materials that you can easily purchase at your local auto parts store or Amazon. This repair is going to significantly slow down the spread of rust and get your vehicle looking good again.
The first thing we want to do is to remove this bumper and evaluate this rust. So we're going to grind away this rust here. Now we're going to keep this as small as possible because we're not going to paint this entire quarter panel. We're going to blend the color and we're going to blend the clear coat here just so it looks better. So we've got a little screw right here that's holding this bumper in. We want to pull this bumper loose away from the quarter panel so we can do some repairs on it. So we're just going to remove these couple screws here. And then typically how these bumpers are attached in most of these late model vehicles is they have a retaining bracket right in here, and this bumper snaps into it and that locks it into place.
Now that the bumper is loose, we can secure it out of the way to do the repair.
So we're going to grind this with our angle grinder and a 36 grit roll lock disc, see what we have as far as the rust is concerned.
So I'm going to use my Astro belt sander with 36 grit sandpaper on it. You can use any kind of grinder that you have, or you can knock the rust out, but you do need to grind it just a bit to remove all that scaly rust as much as possible. The more rust you can get at and remove, the better your repair is going to be and the longer it's going to last. So much for this rust just being surface rust. This is an actual hole, and this is a double-walled quarter panel. So there's two thin layers of metal sandwiched together, and it's went through both of them into the wheel well. Now this has some seam sealant inside, and what's happened is that water's got trapped in between that seam sealant and the metal and rusted it out. We want to remove that seam sealer to get rid of all the rust that's underneath. I just used a small screwdriver to scrape that seam sealer out so we can get it ready for sandblasting.
Got the sandblaster. We'll hit it with some sand.
For best results, you want to sandblast it. This is just an inexpensive sandblaster. You can pick them up for 25 bucks on Amazon, and you put a hose in a bag of sand. Now you don't have to sandblast it. You could just treat the metal with a rust inhibitor. Make sure you get as much of the rust as you can. That's going to give you a better job. There was a little bit of rust hiding under some seam sealer behind in this quarter panel, so I had to scrape it off, and then I'll hit it with a little bit of sand and clean it up.
Now we're going to spray some rust treatment on. Spray it from the inside too, and I'll show you that, but we're going to spray it all throughout here. This will chemically react with the rust and convert it into a paintable surface that is no longer rust. Spray it on the inside here. We'll let this sit up for about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what we're going to do next. The converter's all dry. You can see how it's starting to turn black around there. That's converting the rust. Now we're going to take this E-coat primer and we're going to spray it in here the best we can. That's it. Okay, so this is some of the things we're going to be using for this repair. We've got the Evercoat Body Shop self-adhesive patches. This is kind of like a metal sheeting. Will help fill the hole so it'll hold the filler in the hole. We've got some Evercoat Body Shop reinforced filler. This is fiberglass infused filler. You can get all this stuff at your local Advanced Auto Parts or AutoZone. It also comes with the hardener. And then something I just purchased off Amazon. These are handy to have. These are just clean sheets of paper to mix your filler on that come with a Bondo spreader. Okay, so I'm going to tap this down just a little bit around here to make sure it's solid, and it feels pretty solid here. But I'm going to tap it down just a little bit around the edge. See, we still got some rust in there. We want to make sure that's all cleaned out. Now you don't have to do this, but I'm going to use a little bit of this fluid film to squirt up into this. It's an oil-based product that's going to help prevent moisture from eating into that metal. I'm just going to spray it all in there.
Now I want to grind this to clean metal to have it ready for the reinforced filler.
Take our sheeting, and this is a self-adhesive, and we're going to cut ourselves out just a little, probably 2 squares. Okay.
Now I'll take our adhesive metal screen and we'll slide this in between the 2 pieces of metal on the quarter panel. And I want to fold the edge a little bit because I want to tuck that in between the lip with the screwdriver here. We're going to wedge it in there and get it in position for some filler. Now we'll go ahead and mix up some filler. So we'll open up our can. And when you open up a new can of filler, you're going to have some resins that have separated. You need to mix that in really well so you get the best performance out of your filler.
Put it right on there, and that'll be plenty. We want to knead this in, make sure it's all mixed up. Before I put my hardener, I do want to tape this up just a little bit. I think I'm going to put another square on the back side of this. So now I'm going to take this square and put it on the back side.
You need to use about 2% hardener for your filler, and I just go from the edge to the center. That's usually enough. And then when you mix it in, you want to fold it in till it's all one uniform color and there's no streaks. Now we're just going to lay this filler into that hole. Remember, we're trying to keep this as small as possible. So we don't want to go outside that metal. And I'm going to press it in at first to let that fill in that hole and make good contact with that metal sheeting. And I'll do the back side as well. And then we'll let this cure and get ready to sand it.
So now that it's dry, we're going to use some 80 grit. This is some 80, and then we've got a couple other pieces here. We'll go over it with 180, and this is 320.
So we're going to sand this filler down with a small block and 80 grit, and the goal is to get this flat and level with the rest of the panel. Now we want to keep this repair small, so you don't want to get a lot of 80 grit scratches outside your repair area. Keep it as small as possible. I also have to sand that lip and the edge and make sure that's nice and flat.
Now we're going to switch over to the 180. And this is going to remove some of those 80 grit scratches because we're going to put a coat of filler, another coat of standard filler over this. So we're taking it out just a little bit farther.
Now we have our fiberglass filler pretty much flat. Don't worry if there's a little wave in there because we're going to use some glazing putty to smooth that out. We'll clean our Bondo spreader and our palette, and then we'll lay in some of this glazing putty. Now this is a finishing putty. It fills any minor scratches or pinholes, and it also will straighten a panel out. So we have a little bit of a wave. We can block it out with this glazing putty. The glazing putty is going to be a lot thinner and smoother than the reinforced fiberglass filler. It's going to be really easy to work with. It's going to smooth out nice and flat. Now it mixes up just the same. You use the same hardener and you fold it in and mix it in until it's all one uniform color. I'll lay this in as smooth as possible and in a little bit larger area so we can block it down to match the rest of the panel. This glaze will take about 20 minutes to cure, and then we can block it with some 180 grit sandpaper, smooth it out, and then we'll go over it with some 320. This will remove those 180 grit scratches, which would show underneath our paint, and 320 and 600 will not. So we need to refine those scratches as we go until we get it primered and then ready for paint. Now we'll block it with a 320 grit sandpaper, and when we block, we want to hold that block flat. We kind of go in an X pattern if possible. Of course, we're trying to keep this repair as small as possible. So there's not really a lot of room to do that. But in order to get it flat and straight, you want to hold it flat. Now we'll switch over to the 600, and this will refine those 320 grit scratches. I'm going to go out just a little bit farther because we can paint and we can apply clear over 600. Now we'll clean it with some water-based cleaner. This is a spray away glass cleaner. We're going to use this quarter panel body line to create a soft edge of primer. And in order to do that, we take a piece of tape, we fold it in half, and we slide it all the way down and fold it in half, and then we can lay that edge right on that body line. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow a little bit of primer to blow under there. It's going to create a soft edge and not a hard line. Now this is really helpful when you're painting and doing a blend. If you have body lines where you're painting up to, use your body lines to create soft edges of blends. I'll talk about that more later on in the next video when we paint this. If you're finding value in this video and want to help me create more content, there's an easy way to do it. All you have to do is like and leave me a comment down below. And if you want to see more of this content, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you need tools or products for your repair, check out my storefront link down in the description. There I have organized and categorized tools and products that you can use on your project. Now I'm going to finish up taping this so we don't get any overspray on the rest of the vehicle, and you can use whatever you need to tape it up so you don't get overspray. This is the primer we're going to use today, and you can purchase this at any auto parts store or Amazon. This is a lacquer primer, and since we've sanded this down with 600 and have very minor scratches, we can use this and it's not going to shrink in those scratches and create a problem. Now, always the best thing to use is a 2K urethane primer, but this is a home repair, remember, so we're doing the least amount possible with the lowest cost possible. With aerosol primers, you want to put your first coat on light and then let it dry, and then you go ahead and apply your second coat and gradually build it up as you go. And probably 3 or 4 coats, even 5 coats might be good with this primer, just so you have enough material to sand it after it cures. Now I let this dry overnight. You don't have to do that. It's probably going to take about 2 hours or so, I would say, to be completely dry out in the sun. And then you can go ahead and sand it. But we'll do all that on the next episode when we go ahead and paint this. And I'm going to show you how you can blend your paint and clear coat, and we're going to do it all with aerosol cans. So stay tuned, make sure your notifications on, and subscribe if you want to see more. I appreciate each and every one of you watching. We'll see you next time on Garage Noise.